What's up, guys? Scotty from Chernobyl Studios. Today, hey man, it's Halloween time, and just like I said last year, I really love Halloween. Last year, I actually provided a set of free multi-tracks for a game that I kind of liked, and I thought I would do the same thing this year. So without further ado, here is the song that I'm giving away multi-tracks for. All right, so it's pretty banging, eh? There's a lot of stuff going on here. Now, it's really funny because this song started as somewhat of a picking exercise where I just wanted to get better at alternate picking with the new grip that I am basically training myself to have with the pick on the guitar. And I thought, hey, you know what's really good is to force myself to record something to a click where I can objectively hear it back. And if it's played like crap, it means it's crap, and it just allows me to get into the groove and really pay attention to what I'm doing. But enough about that. So let's go over what this track actually has. So it's really fast, first and foremost. It's 137 BPM, as you can see down here, or what is it, 274, if that's what you would prefer to think of it. And we have drums, bass, 4 rhythm guitar tracks, and then a bunch of orchestral elements here, just to make the song sound a bit more evil, a bit more interesting to listen to. And that's it. That's really all there is to it. Let's talk about the drums first. The drums are Easy Drummer 2 Death Metal Easy X. I have included an export of the MIDI drums if you want to use the EasyX or you want to use a different drum sample library. Just keep in mind that you're going to have to remap them if you're not using this exact software with the, what's this? This is the Cast Iron Blast preset. So if you're using a different preset or a different drum library and you import the MIDI and you want to use that MIDI, you're going to have to change the MIDI around a little bit to include velocities and, obviously the patches things like that. So those are the drums. So here they are in their uh, full glory here, and they're crazy. Doing a lot of fills, a lot of blast beats, a lot of double bass, a lot of craziness. So it's gonna be a bit of a challenge to keep them under control, especially the kick drums, because the kick drums are pretty crazy, and you can see I've done quite a bit here in order to keep them under control, to include basic EQ. And I also automated another EQ cut during the fast double bass rolls, and I've automated the double bass rolls down in volume when they're happening to really try and keep the low end from going crazy bonkers. Okay, we have bass, which is next, which is a VST bass, the Euro Bass 2 from Submission Audio. I really like the juicy punchiness of this particular bass, and it's important to have punchy low end even with a song at this tempo, and a lot of the punchiness is going to come from your bass guitar, as we can hear. So we're getting that punchy attack from the bass guitar. I actually have put micro shift on the bass to help widen it a little bit, because I want the mix to sound as expansive as possible, even though there aren't a lot of elements. So that's just a little chorusy type effect that I actually learned from Adam Steele from Hot Pole, who learned it from somebody else, and so on and so forth. But bass is pretty straightforward, just really, these are all moves that I did when the mix was playing, so that I could get the bass to do what I wanted it and needed it to do in order to fill out this song. For example, carve space for snare, get rid of this honky aspect of the bass, and then help it cut through the mix a little bit more. And obviously we have L1, that's pretty typical, yeah. Now, let's get into the guitars. First thing you're going to notice is that I can't click and drag. Are you kidding me? Come on. There we go. First thing you're going to notice is that these are not DI files. Correct. These are not DI files. I recorded this with my Angle and with the Captor X into Cubase Pro. So basically, you are going to receive guitar tracks that don't have a cab on it, but the tone and the angle are all there. So you don't need to add an amp simulator on here. You don't need to reamp these or anything like that. These are not DI files. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to load an IR loader of your choice and choose different IRs, however you want to go. For me, I used angled cab stuff because angle is my jam. On one side, I'm going SM57 cap and cap edge, and then a angled 45-degree angle, and then another one I created a bit of a darker tone with a 421 and a 121, and I blended those together, and they all go into one bus here. Now guitars are gonna be not difficult, but you'll have to take a little bit to get this dialed in correctly, because the guitars are in drop A and they are doing a lot of notes. There's a lot of alternate picking, so there needs to be a lot of articulation with the guitars, and it's really hard to do this in lower tunings. First and foremost, because if the guitars are played poorly, there is no articulation at all. But in the case, with my case, I'm using the same pick that Carl Sanders uses, and the reason he uses it, as I come to find out, is there's articulation with those lower tunings. It does take a bit to get used to, but it really does work. So the guitar tracks, I spent an entire evening, so about 4 or 5 hours, recording these guitar parts. It took me that long. These are not edited in any way. I punched them in where they weren't tight, but these are all legitimately played. So you can see I punched in here, whatever, but these are not slip edited. There's no editing at all. And they're not 100% perfectly played either. I have some limitations with my left hand, but they're pretty damn tight. And when you quad track like this, the tighter you can play, the better it's going to be. Okay. And then I have, if you're in Guitar Tone Mastery, I've talked about this, 100 times. It's my classic chain for working with guitars. There's nothing new there. Now, the orchestral elements are interesting. And then I wanted to accentuate certain parts of the song and make the song more creepy, which is exactly what's happening when we get to stuff like this. So by themselves, you might think, wow, there's like no low end, it's really tinny. Guys, kick drum, bass guitar, and a drop A guitar, 4 of them. There's so much lowing in this song. It's gonna take a little bit to get it all under control. But I think you guys are really gonna enjoy it. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun and a bit of a challenge. This song was challenging for me to mix, and in fact, I sent it off a couple of times to Alex from Hot Pole to be like, dude, my ears are shot. You know, what's going on here? And yeah, he was like, yeah, your low end's a little bit rumbly, so try this, try that. So listen, I'm not above asking others for help. I think that's normal. So I struggled with this mix, getting it clear, getting it tight, getting it punchy, and I thought, hey, I want to give it to you guys so you can practice doing the same thing, because it's not very often that you can get multi-tracks like this to try and practice and cut your teeth on. And I will allow you guys to post it on your social media, your YouTube, or your studio portfolio. Not a problem. So completely free. You're able to post them and do whatever you want with them when they're done. Effects. Now, even with a song this fast, it's still very important to add an atmospheric element. See, I did use room verb and I did use plate verb. I did put plate on the snare and I did put plate on the toms. Okay, it's still important to have the atmosphere and the reverb in the mix, because if things, in my opinion, are too tight, too dry, it's too surgical, it's too boring, And so it's really important to get some life into the drums, which we're doing with both room and plate snares, plate reverbs. So I have rooms on the overheads, and I have plates on the snare and toms. So it's there. It's just adding a little bit of extra dimension into the drums a little bit and not making them totally dry, because they'd be really boring. And plus we have the reverb from Easy Drummer itself sitting there as well, so we're kind of stacking a little bit. But again, you have to be careful. If you have too much reverb, you will completely lose definition in the drums, but you don't want them dry as a bone. It's not going to contribute to an interesting mix to listen to. And that's pretty much it. This is the song. Now, there is a PDF file that I have included of this song, where I talk about a lot of other things that you may want to keep in mind, to include how to approach the mix and what order might be a good idea, things to watch out for, certain key areas where you want to do certain things. Like I talk about another thing that I did actually that you may want to try that I mentioned in the PDF file is, you may notice here there's not a ton of automation in the orchestra. Now, if you're in my mixing extreme metal course, I did oodles of automation. To be fair, that song was a bit more complicated with a much more complicated orchestral arrangement. But the cool thing that I found is I can use this track spacer plugin here from Waves Factory. I can put it on the entire orchestral bus, sidechain it to rhythm guitars, and do a very small percentage, and it really helps balance out the orchestral elements with the guitars quite nicely, provided that the guitars are processed well and the overall mix balance is good. And I did that and I was like, I'm done. But if you don't have this plugin, it's not a big deal. You can just resort to manual volume automation, which I've been doing this entire time until I had that plugin. So it's just a time saver, okay? And everything in my master is pretty much the same, which I showed in mixing your first metal song. So yeah, so everything, like, I'm not doing anything different. What I show in my courses is what I actually do. And here's the actual session. So what you're going to get are all the free multi-tracks, including the MIDI file, including my mix here. I put that in there so you can reference it if you wish, and a PDF to help guide you along to give you some ideas of how to process certain things, how to do certain things, so you don't feel totally lost. Okay, so it's all completely free. Link down below in the description to go ahead and pick those up. Pick them up and have a nice, great, evil metal Halloween, especially mixing this badass of a song. All right, guys, that'll do it. Go ahead, grab the multi-tracks, have fun, and feel free to post your mixes on your YouTube channel, your socials, your studio portfolio. Just let me know so I can have a listen. I'd be very curious what you guys come up with. All right, so grab those tracks, have a good time, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, have a good one.